You didn't stop it, did you?
Yeah, I've already recorded it 2 or 3 times.
Oh, good. Steve Moore, alcoholic. Good job, Jeanette. I can't even remotely top that, but I'll get up here and try to tell the truth and honor Carolyn's request. That's what she wanted me to just tell the truth, which would be probably a different story than y'all have ever heard. Beth, thanks for asking us. This seemed like a good idea about 3 months ago. Right now, it doesn't seem like such a great idea. Now, I'm not sure if Beth really wanted to hear the message of hope or how two people can live together, maybe be reasonably happy and peaceful and not kill each other. That might be part of it, but I have a sneaky suspicion it happened in one of our business meetings, Delois, where I made Beth mad. In the following programs committee meeting, she asked us to speak. So, I think that might have been what happened. But no, I do appreciate the kind words and appreciate you asking us to speak. I was just kind of thinking, because people ask me, when you do, and this I guess is the second time we've done this. We did it over at Brownson. We tried not to let anybody know it. People ask me Jeanette didn't know you when you were drinking. They kind of don't even understand why you go to Al-Anon if you don't have to, and because she didn't know me when I was drinking, and the answer I give is Al-Anon is for a spouse or a family member of an alcoholic, whether they're drinking or not. In fact, sometimes we're probably easier to live with drinking than not drinking. So although Jeanette might not have ever lived with active alcoholism, I think there's probably been some occasions she's lived with untreated alcoholism. Usually when I come home from a business meeting, it's pretty untreated at that point. But I do appreciate the program of Al-Anon and what it does for family members that need some peace in their life, because I think that's the thing about, us alcoholics. We've got the alcohol or other stuff to numb the feelings and to numb the pain. Al-Anons, unless they're caught up in something besides alcohol and drugs, and sometimes they are, they don't really have anything to numb the pain, so it can sting quite a bit, especially living with an alcoholic or just living with somebody crazy that maybe is not drinking. So I appreciate that. And one of the things that Jeanette didn't tell you about the whole meeting me, and by the way, Rob was laughing at me about the black Reeboks. In 1989, those suckers looked good. I mean, tonight maybe not so much, but yeah, thanks. Well, I was a year old when Wallace got sober, so that just puts everything in perspective, hopefully. By the way, speaking of Wallace, I need to make this announcement while I got your undivided attention maybe. Next Tuesday is June 10th, which is AA's birthday, but there's some of us going to meet up at Davidson Steakhouse in Sanford at 6:30 and celebrate Wallace's 50th anniversary in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's been 50 years and some change, and I appreciate Wallace. So those of you that want to get in on that, just let me know after the meeting, and we'll put you on the docket. So anyway, getting back to what Jeanette didn't tell you, that's the thing about it. That's what my sponsor always tells me. My sponsor doesn't have to worry about what I tell him, because I'll tell him the truth usually, and I'll tell him everything that's going on. But he says, Stephen, tell me, it's not what you tell me that bothers me. He says, it's what you don't tell me. And so that's what Jeanette didn't tell you is when she met me, I was already engaged to probably an alcoholic and didn't know it at the time. But I don't even know what that's worth, but I think it's just kind of interesting. She was dead set on marrying me, I guess, and I appreciate that. Which kind of leads into a conversation we had, and Waylon, you reminded me of this conversation. Jeanette and I were talking one night, and I asked her, I said, if I died, would you remarry? And she's like, well, I don't know, probably. And I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have asked the question, so I ain't going to stop there, So I'm like, is he going to live in our house? She thought, not long enough, but she thought for about 2.5 seconds. She said, well, probably if he's homeless or doesn't have a place to live. I'm like, really? Will he drive my truck? I want to know, because I like my truck. And she said, well, yeah, if he liked your truck, he'd probably drive your truck too. I'm like, I should have. I said, well, would he sleep in our bed? She's like, well, probably. I'm like, I'm an idiot, but I ain't gonna stop there. So I'm like, will he use my golf club? She says, oh no, he's left-handed. So anyway, I don't know what that's supposed to mean other than don't ask questions if you don't want the answers. But the truth is out there if you dig a little bit. My story, I tell you, I appreciate Primary Purpose Group. I probably would rather be speaking anywhere on this planet other than right here tonight, because we can go out of town and speak at other groups and lie, and people don't know, really. You come here, and you guys have sat with me in the programs and the business meetings, and y'all know I'm crazy sometimes and a little outspoken, so I will try to just tell the truth, Carolyn. And the truth of the matter is, what happened with me is I come from a good family. I was born and raised here in Moore County, and I come from a good home. I am the youngest of 6 kids, so I'm the baby that Jeanette had to put a little jab in about being the youngest and the baby and all that. I knew what she was doing when she did that. And by the way, I would encourage you, if you're single here tonight and looking for a wife, I would encourage you to marry a codependent. It ain't a bad deal at all. Because they will take care of you. Won't they, Waylon? And we'll let them, because we're nice people like that. We'll just let them. But anyway, I came from a good family too, and I don't know that there's any really, early on any immediate alcoholism in my family. My brothers and sisters say that my dad drank too much, but he quit drinking like when I was, probably 7 or 8 years old. So I don't really remember much about him drinking. But I come from a good home, and no reason for a young guy like me to really feel exactly what Jeanette was talking about. It seems like it's a common denominator, probably whether we're in Al-Anon or Alcoholics Anonymous, or that I just didn't feel in. I didn't feel like I got it. And what happened and growing up, Dad took us fishing. We played baseball. He didn't miss a baseball game. I was a pretty decent second baseman, wasn't I, Waylon? Up until about 11 years old. and that's when an older brother and a friend of his introduced me to smoking weed, marijuana. I called it pot back then. I don't know what the hip, slick, and cool name to call it is now, but we got high, and I loved it. And I tremble to think, at kids 11 years old that has to start out on that, but that's my story. And camping out with some guys, at 11, 12 years old, one night. I had experimented with alcohol, but this particular night, we got a hold of some MD 2020. And I don't recommend that stuff, but it'll work in a pinch. And old Bill C. talks about tapering off. MD 2020, you had to taper on to that stuff. You can't just jump into it. But we got a hold of some of that one night, and I felt exactly what, when I read what Dr. Silkworth talked about, that alcoholics primarily drink because of the effects produced by alcohol. When I read that, I understood that. Now, that night camping out, I didn't really think about the doctor's opinion too much because I didn't know anything about it. But all I know is I found something that made me feel good, and it made me feel different. And I knew life was going to be complete as long as I could get plenty to drink. And that started out my journey into alcoholism and uncontrolled drinking. And I didn't spin out of control at 11 years old, but growing up through my teenage years, every chance I got, it seemed like weed was easier to get than alcohol sometimes, but it seemed like there was never really a problem getting either one. There was just it was almost like it was an endless supply that we could get it. And I loved everything about it. And I hit high school, and I got my driver's license. And I understood that promise too. You're talking about a new freedom and a new happiness. I understood that when I got my driver's license. And if I had to think when I spun out of control, it was probably at 16 years old. I was getting high every day, drinking heavily every weekend, and I wasn't about to let up for anybody. I just didn't. And I I guess I started out with a 72 Pinto. It had a Craig Power Play stereo in that sucker. It was like 72,000 watts per channel or something. Maybe not quite that many. The stereo cost more than the car did. Had cassette tapes. Rob, you and Matthew don't know nothing about no cassette tapes, but we had cassette tapes back then. And I had a ride. I mean, I was reading Bill's story, and his story, of course, is a lot different than mine, but I could relate to it. But when he kind of put things together in his life, he said he had arrived. Man, I had arrived in that car with my driver's license. I was set. And, I just loved everything about partying. I loved running with the crowd that rolled hard and fast, and there was just no reason to let up. And I didn't get into a lot of trouble in high school. I did actually graduate to a 68 Camaro, so then we were able to start doing some drag racing outside of town there. There was a straight road called the New Road, and we had just, late at night, somebody following behind you, I'd follow, and we'd, it nothing to be running 100, 120, 30 miles an hour, blind drunk side by side and see who could outrun the other one. It's just, and I guess that's part of the fun of alcoholism, but it's part of the insanity too, because some people could have got hurt, and I'm grateful that nobody ever got hurt, and it was just the party was on. And, what happened, just kind of fast forward, and I made it out of high school. I understand why they call it high school. I stayed high all 4 years. I guess I was trying to live up to the name. And I made it out of high school, and I don't know how. They did graduate me for some reason, probably just to get rid of me. And I promptly hauled off and did nothing with my life. I mean, I grew up working. I knew what work ethic was. I was born to, and taught, what that looked like. But when I got out of high school, my dad had ran a store for about 25 years, and he closed it up about the time I got out of high school. And one of the things that I struggled with and had a hard time with was, I stole a lot of money from my parents. Bill Wilson talked about stealing from his wife's slender purse. I stole from my mom's slender purse. It was slender to me. It was slender after I got through with it, I'll tell you that. I don't know about when I started, and I stole a lot of money from my dad in that business. And, I had two other brothers, and I'm not up here to tell their story. I hope they ain't in the crowd. Well, I know one of them ain't in the crowd, but one of them might be. And we all three were kind of dipping into it. Why Dad thought it was a good idea we all had the combination to the safe was beyond me, but we did. And, so I stole an undisclosed amount of money. That's what I like to say, and I don't have a clue how much it was, but that and other things put my parents in a financial bind, and they closed the store, and they ended up filing bankruptcy. And I can't take 100% ownership of something like that, but I knew I had a part of it, and I don't know that it really matters, because when I sort of started looking at in my fourth step, that was some hard pill to swallow, thinking what ownership I had in that, but. So, I stole a lot of money, stole a lot of merchandise, and just took advantage of my parents and really deprived them of the son that they deserved to have. And that's just, that's where my alcoholism took me. And honest to God, I felt like I wasn't hurting anybody but myself. I always thought if I had enough money, life would be okay. Lack of money was my dilemma. It wasn't lack of power. And at least I thought it was. And I just thought if people would get off my case and the law would leave me alone, because I did start getting in trouble with the law. After I graduated from high school, I couldn't hold a job. I did get my first DUI at 17. I was 17, and I was riding around one night. We'd been drinking some TJ Swan, stepping out, and this deputy pulled me, and I was stepping out of the car, not too good. He wanted me to walk this straight line or the white line, and I said, "Dude, I'm too drunk to walk. That's why I'm driving." He didn't have any sense of humor at all, so we went to jail. And he said it's closer. I blew on the breath. I tried not to blow on the breathalyzer, and I don't know how they know when you ain't blowing, but they know when you ain't blowing, because I was not blowing as hard as I could not blow, and he knew I wasn't blowing. So I blew on. I'm like, "What the hell? I just need to go ahead and get it over with." Because DUIs back then, most of my friends had had one. Bill had 6 or 7. I didn't want to catch him, but I at least wanted to get one under my belt. And so it's almost a badge of honor, I guess. But whoever was doing the thing said it's closer to a 20, but we'll call it a 19. So I was a little disappointed at that. It's impressive if you blow a 20, especially at the first time, I guess. I don't know. Some of y'all bad cases might have blew worse than that, but I blew hard because I knew I was in trouble. So I blew like hell when he told me to blow, so I did. And I tell you, it was all fun and games, and I really did. I was showing my butt up there in the jail, and it was all fun and games. So I looked up and saw my dad. Now my dad was a man of a few words. He didn't have to say much, just give you that look, kind of like Waylon's giving me now, like hurry up, I want to go eat. And I think the only thing I can remember Dad saying is that'll cost you. That's what he told me, and it did. But I got out of that, and again, I was living at home, still taking advantage of my parents, and just, I pretty much would take advantage of anybody that crossed my path. And I really didn't care who I hurt or how much I hurt them, because I was out for me. And when the book talks about selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all my problems, I understood that. And I know that just because I quit drinking, that stuff doesn't go away and I automatically become a nice guy too. I've learned that. But anyway, I just kind of limped on the next couple of years, hanging out with the guys. I had a guy there in Carthage that had a trailer. So around 3 o'clock, we'd hang out over there and, wait for the young and the restless to come home. Victor Newman's my hero. He's about as sorry as I was. And, we watched General Hospital, too, to figure out what was going to happen with Laura. And I still ain't sure. I had to Google it. I still ain't sure what happened to Laura. I know what happened to me. It wasn't good. And then on Sunday mornings now, we get spiritual. Actually, we get religious because you can't do this spiritually. You have to be pretty religious. But we would lay our hands on the TV when Ernest Ainsley would come on and want to heal us. And he told us to lay our hands on the TV, and we would. And he healed us until 1 o'clock when they started selling beer in Cameron, and then we got unhealed right quick. But, that was just the insanity. And, but it was crazy. And I loved every bit of it. Although at this point, I was approaching 19, 20 years old. And what my life looked like is I'd wake up in the mornings, I'd have the cold sweats at night, and I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be shaking. And, I knew I had to have something to drink. And I might go a day without drinking, and the next day, I might be okay. But if I tried to go 2 days without drinking, that second day or that third day, it would be pretty violent. And I just, I couldn't function. And I knew I had to maintain some alcohol in me at all times. And by this time, I was willing to do anything that, we were exposed to a lot of stuff that could make us, help us drink all night. And I loved everything about that stuff. But it got to the point I knew that my life was spiraling out of control. There's nothing I could do about it. And I knew I was in deep trouble, and I didn't know what to do. And so what happened, kind of the beginning of the end at 20 years old, I guess it was January of '84, I get, I'm not driving this time. This is how it's almost embarrassing to admit this. I'm sitting at the laundromat in Carthage, North Carolina, about 11 o'clock at night. Now, there ain't nobody out at 11 o'clock at night at Carthage except for the cops. I mean, whoever I thought I was looking for, I'm sure she'd already gone home or done something else because she didn't happen to come by. And so the cop pulls up. And we'd had some brushes a couple of times, but he told me, he said, the third strike and you're out. And I don't know why I needed to call him on that, but I did. And this was my third strike that night, and he took me in, and that's when I got my second DUI. I wasn't even good and drunk. I only blew like a 10 or 11. And but he charged me. I got a felony possession, intent to sell and deliver marijuana, and transporting broken sealed liquor. I had my Jack Daniels. I don't know where it was, but he got it. He found it. And so I had graduated from the MD 2020. I mean, I'm a guy with no job. I'm stealing from anybody that ain't paying attention, and I'm drinking Jack Daniels. I don't know how all that came together. I was a big-time drug dealer, too. He took all my cash, $80. Well, that's a lot of money in '84, okay? It's a lot of money now, but I almost buy you a tank of gas. But so anyway, we went to jail, and I'll tell you, it wasn't fun this time. I knew I was in some serious trouble. And they kept me a long time, wanting to know a lot of stuff that I just like, no, I'm good. Just go ahead and process me, do what you got to do. And they took me home. And this particular cop that busted me, there had been a few nights he had taken me home, pulled me over, make me park my car and take me home. That's just, you had to really be an idiot to get locked up in Carthage. There was another time the cop, I was 16 years old, he pulled me over and he said, he looked in the cooler in my back seat of my Camaro. He said, the best thing you can do is get out of town until it's gone. I'm like, that's a great idea. You won't see me until it's gone, and then I'll be back. And, but that's just the way it was. And anyhow, this particular night, I finally got home, and I knew I was in deep trouble, and I didn't know what to do. So I do what any respectable drunk would do. I go get me a lawyer. Actually, I think I first go to the bank because I still had some credit. And I don't know why this bank thought it was a good idea to make me a loan with no job, but he did. And I got a lawyer. And this kind of ties in with the CPCPI work that we do within this group. And I appreciate Matthew and Dave, what they do, and everybody that's on that committee. That the CPC is cooperation with professional community and public information. Won't get into a lot of that, but we go to doctors, lawyers, clergy, preachers, whoever, and tell them that if they know somebody's in trouble with drinking, there's a program and a place they can get help called Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's hope to be found here and people's lives change. And that's the message we try to give them. So my lawyer, who was a non-alcoholic, he suggested I go see a substance abuse counselor. So I go see him because I know I'm in trouble and I need to do something. And the counselor is a non-alcoholic. He suggests I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. So it could have been somebody in this room, did their job with that guy. And they said, if you see a young guy or any guy or gal in trouble with drinking, you should send them to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my first meeting was over here at the Episcopal Monday night meeting. And I don't know anything about it because I left there and got high because the meeting was more than I could take. But I went to see the counselor the following Friday, and he knew I was in trouble, and he suggested I go to Samaritan Colony. Now I'm thinking that's a really bad idea because I didn't know where Samaritan Colony was. I ain't even sure. I barely knew where Rockingham was. I knew where the drag strip was because we used to hang out there some too, and that was a lot of fun. But he told me it's 6 miles out of Rockingham, and that's all he had to tell me because you go 6 miles out of Rockingham in any direction, you're in the middle of nowhere. And I knew this place was going to be in the middle of nowhere. And of course, the first thing I checked, because I don't want to have contempt prior to investigation, I want to know is it co-ed, because that's important. And because I think I ain't going to have any alcohol or drugs for it was an 8-week program then it just needed to be co-ed. And he said it wasn't co-ed. And I'm thinking I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere I think it was a 12-bed facility with a bunch of guys with nothing to drink. I'm like, this is a really bad idea. So I agreed to go, like something crazy. And this was on Friday. And I don't know about y'all, but I'll tell you, the few days you drinking before going to treatment, it just ain't the same. I couldn't get there. And I tried, and they told me I needed to go 48 hours, with no alcohol or drugs. And so I tried, but by Saturday it was useless. And so I drank on up until the time I checked in there. It was Sunday night, and then my oldest brother took me down there Monday morning. And I'll always be grateful for Samaritan Colony because that's where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I landed down there, I was just about as hopeless as a guy could be because I'm 20 years old. This is March of 1984. I guess it's March 24th. That's my sobriety date. I don't think I gave y'all that information. So I am sober. I do have a sobriety date and a home group and a sponsor that I'm grateful for. But I land down there and I'm thinking it's over. My life is over as I know it. And I get there and I start getting introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they start introducing me to these 12 steps, and they start talking about God and God as we understand Him and a higher power. And I'm thinking, if I was not hopeless when I got there, when they started telling me that I was going to have to connect with the power and probably try to establish some relationship with God as I understand Him or some kind of power greater than myself, that drove me to another level of hopelessness that I hope I never have to go back to, because I was pretty sure that if my hope was going to be something spiritual or some kind of higher power, I was dead in the water. There was absolutely no way that a guy like me could connect with anything good in this universe. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in God, but it was I was pretty sure He didn't believe in me, and nor should He. You know, to do the things I'd done and treated the people the way I had treated them, I didn't deserve to have anything good like that happen in my life. And what I did is I just started following directions, and I thought, oh boy, it's up. You know, and they told me down there, and we learned that in Alcoholics Anonymous too, that I can address my alcoholism today and try to get help for it, or I can ignore it and choose or go back out drinking again. I don't know if we're alcoholic, that's really a choice. I think it's a moment of insanity that leads me back to that next drink. But I may address it in 5 years or 10 years. But they said, make no mistake about it, if you live, you will address your alcoholism someday, you know, if it doesn't kill you one way or the other. And I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that I was a young guy, 20 years old, that I probably wasn't going to, I just probably knew I wasn't going to die from alcoholism. So I wasn't worried about this disease necessarily killing me. Probably my bigger concern was living and not being able to stay sober, because I know I was headed to jail. And I knew if I couldn't stay sober that I was going to be in and out of jails and prisons. I just knew that was going to be my fate. So death, you know, I would have almost probably welcomed that or been willing to take that risk, but not living with this disease. So anyway, I started following directions, and you know, I learned a lot while I was there. And I learned, you know, what I did is I got down to the causes and conditions, and I didn't understand this, but I knew the fear, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the resentment, the anger, the selfishness, the self-centeredness, all that stuff that the book talks about. I started learning that, yeah, I am eat up with that, and that is the root of my problem. And I thought if I could keep my license, maybe get a wife or get a girlfriend or have plenty of money or get the law off my back, I thought if I could get all that stuff in place, my life would be okay. What I didn't realize was I had to treat the root causes. I couldn't just treat the symptoms. And that's what I learned, you know, early on. And I did that fourth step, and I sat down, and probably the best work I'd ever did was my first fourth step. And when we got to the end of it, the guy said, is there anything else? And what I did was, there's always something else, right? And so I knew that there had been some stuff that had gone on in my life that involved some other people that I wasn't going to tell anybody. You know what? Ain't none of the business to start with. And if I've got to go there to quit drinking, then forget it. It's too embarrassing, it's too humiliating, and I just can't do it. So I said, as a matter of fact, there is. And I went on, and I did get honest in that fifth step. Some stuff I couldn't write down, but I was able to talk about it and realize that, you know, I wasn't the only one on this planet that had done some stuff that hurt other people and that I wasn't proud of. And probably more important, it was, you know, that I could be forgiven for it. You know, that God is good and God will forgive me. But I've got to take some actions. I've got to try to change things and turn things around. And so that was probably the most important work I had done there. And I got out of there, and just kind of fast forward. You know, when I got out of there, I did go to court, lost my license for a couple years, and did the best I could to try to you know, make a life and be self-supporting and quit taking advantage of people. And you know, after, you know, I got my license back, a guy offered me a job, Reeves, that a lot of you knew, that was a member of this group, and I was able to keep that job for 5 years, which was a miracle. That was a world record for me. And I'll always be grateful that he gave me that opportunity. And you know, along that same time, I was able to start a business and put that together. And I didn't, you know, y'all told me not to get in a relationship for the first year. Well, I waited till 15 years to get married because I had a lot of business to tend to. You think I was being smart, but I probably was not being smart. But anyway, I'm grateful that God, blessed me with a good codependent wife. But a good wife, and Al-Anon's ruined a lot of that stuff, so don't get your hopes up. If you get a codependent wife, keep her away from Al-Anon. That was a joke, probably a bad one. I just wanted to talk about a couple of other things that are important, and I don't know, if I got 5 minutes, Waylon, do this, because I ain't going over. 5 minutes. You give me 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes. I'm going to hit it all, wrap it up in 5 minutes. All right. I appreciate being a part of this home group. I know this may not, I don't know if this is the best home group on the planet, because I ain't been to all the home groups on the planet, but I know this is a good fit for me, and I appreciate being a part of it. I appreciate all our fellow home group members and the Al-Anon that support us, and also the visitors that come from Keeping It Sober, West Side, Fast Group. I don't want to try to start naming them all, but we get a lot of support, and we try to support the other groups, and I appreciate being a part of that, and I appreciate the activity that our group does, and going over to detox, and Waylon, all you've done, and you and Nori, to keep that going and connected, and I appreciate the cooperation we have with Keeping It Sober group, that we team up and go to detox. And those of you that go to Wallace and Daniel, those of you guys that go to Morrison, I appreciate at least being a part of a group that supports that. I don't do that on a regular basis, but I'm glad to hear when things are going good down there and that the message is being carried. And, I guess the most important thing that I think I do, in my recovery is I try to always keep a new guy that I'm going through the book with, and I try to sponsor guys, and I don't try to see how many guys I can sponsor. That's unimportant. I guess the question, I asked Richard Page one time how many he sponsored, and he said he sponsors one guy too few, that there's always somebody else that if they need help, he's going to be willing to help them. And I carry the guys through the book, and when it says pray, we pray. If it says work a step, we work a step. And we do the program, we go through those first 164 pages, and we do it just like it's laid out in the big book. And, I've had the opportunity to sponsor some guys. I've worked with a lot of guys. A few of them have actually stayed sober. I had one guy, I think this is a funny story. If not, laugh anyway, make me feel good. I had one guy that I was talking to about sponsorship. He wanted to know what my success rate was sponsoring guys. I thought, you arrogant little, so I found somebody more arrogant than I was, and I thought this is kind of cool. And I'm pretty quick on my feet sometimes. And I said, well, I guess it's 100%. I hadn't gotten drunk in a long time. And so, he bought that idea, and I worked with him until he couldn't stand it anymore and left. But I've had a lot of fun, and the other thing in the book says there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of laughter, and there's a lot of tragedies, in life. And I had to go through the death of my brother, and that was tough. And he was a young guy, and he had a stroke and suffered. And one of the things I learned, it's not like you see it on TV that people close their eyes and go to sleep. They fight tooth and nail, and they try to hang on. They do the best they can. And I appreciate a couple of people, and I know I missed somebody, but I know AJ and John over here, really was there for Bill and helped him a lot, and I know he appreciated that. And I had to go through the experience of my dad passing away, and I'll tell you, one of the miracles of Alcoholics Anonymous was that when he drew his last breath, there was nothing else that I needed to say or do. We'd already cleaned everything up. Everything was done, and that's a huge miracle in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know, if somebody's sitting here tonight and somebody's passed away that you hadn't made amends to, through good sponsorship, there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that too. And so there, the two guys, my brother and a friend of his that I told you we got high together at 11 years old, both of those guys died. Bill, a little less, his body was badly burned by alcohol, but he didn't die as a direct result of the illness, but the other guy did. He never sought any help. And so I know it's a killer illness. I don't know that really keeps anybody sober, but it kind of keeps me on my toes, knowing that I need to dig in a day at a time. And it ain't about me and sitting around checking my belly button. It's about me getting busy, trying to help somebody else and do something for somebody else, and hopefully have a sense of gratitude. And if I'm truly grateful, there's two places I can check. my gratitude. One is my checking account. Where's my money going? Am I giving? Am I trying to be supportive and tithing and doing the stuff I need to do to share what God has blessed me with? And the other place is my calendar. You know, what am I doing to try to help somebody else? Those are two good places. If I'm truly grateful for what God has given me, those are where I can kind of check up on that. So appreciate y'all listening. My time's up, ain't it, Waylon? Yeah, just right. And God is good, and I love you guys. Thanks.